What I mean is that there are certain types of people who shouldn't be flying. You understand? Colonel John Smith was taken aback, stunned into silence by the airline employee's words. He had dedicated his entire life to serving his country and was now escorting the remains of a fallen soldier home to his family. He never imagined that after decades of fighting for his nation, he would be subjected to such treatment. Will justice prevail for the fallen soldier and the honorable colonel? Los Angeles International Airport teemed with travelers. Families dragging their rolling suitcases. Business professionals glued to their electronic devices. And children darting playfully in front of their weary parents. Colonel John Smith made his entrance. The polished sheen of his military dress shoes clicking sharply against the slick tile flooring. He had long been accustomed to such bustling airport scenes, yet today carried a noticeably different atmosphere. The weight that bore down upon his shoulders was not merely the collection of medals and insignia adorning his formal military attire, but rather the somber sight of a flag-draped casket awaiting him on the tarmac. Within lay Private First Class David Lee, a young man of only 21, whose life had been tragically cut short. Colonel Smith adjusted his service cap and drew in a deep, steadying breath. He had a mission to fulfill. A duty that transcended the boundaries of his rank or the pursuit of personal recognition. This was not a matter of self-interest, but a solemn obligation, a promise made to every soldier who had made the ultimate sacrifice and would never return home. No one gets left behind. He proceeded towards the airline's check-in counter, placing his military documentation and identification card before the attendant. Initially, the woman behind the counter barely acknowledged his presence, her attention fixated on the computer screen as she typed, a slight frown creasing her brow. Eventually, she raised her gaze, her eyes scanning Colonel Smith's uniform before lingering on the color of his skin. A brief pause, a mere moment that stretched into an eternity, was enough for Colonel Smith to discern a subtle yet distinct shift in her demeanor. When she finally addressed him, her smile appeared strained and insincere. "I apologize, sir, but it seems there is a discrepancy with your ticket. We are unable to board you at this time." Her tone held a noticeably colder edge compared to how she had interacted with other passengers. Colonel Smith released a slow, deliberate exhale. He had encountered and managed a wide spectrum of challenging situations throughout his career. From the chaos of the battlefield to the intricacies of international diplomacy and the complexities of political entanglements. But this felt different. "I am here to escort the remains of a fallen soldier," he stated evenly, tapping the stack of official paperwork. "Everything is in strict accordance with protocol." The airline employee avoided making direct eye contact. "I understand, sir, but there are certain security protocols in place, and we are unable to circumvent them." Colonel Smith maintained his composure, his voice calm and steady. "Security protocols? Yes, sir," she replied, forcing a weak, apologetic smile. "It's simply a matter of company policy." He remained motionless, his stance unwavering. "Which specific policy?" Behind him, the line of passengers continued to grow, their murmurs and whispers filling the air. He could feel the weight of their collective gaze, some laced with curiosity, others with a hint of scrutiny and prejudice. But rather than retreating, he straightened his posture and stood his ground. He would not depart without receiving a satisfactory explanation. However, the airline employee remained equally unyielding. The atmosphere surrounding the check-in counter grew increasingly tense. The conversations behind him gradually ceased as people began to take notice of the unfolding situation. A man dressed in a crisp military uniform being denied boarding, particularly a man of color, was not an everyday occurrence. "Sir, I've already told you." The employee began to lose patience, her voice rising. "This is company policy. There's nothing we can do. You can file a complaint later. But right now, you have to leave." "I need to know exactly which policy is being applied here," Colonel Smith emphasized, his voice still calm but firm. Having flown with military escorts before, he knew the procedure well. So, why was today different? The employee shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "I don't know, sir. Maybe there's a change in the system. Or maybe because of you." She hesitated, then continued, her voice laced with sarcasm. "Maybe because you don't meet our standards." Colonel Smith frowned. "Don't meet your standards? What do you mean?" "What I mean," the employee said, her voice filled with contempt, "is that there are certain types of people who shouldn't be flying. You understand what I'm saying?" This statement hit Colonel Smith like a slap in the face. He had restrained his anger until now, but the employee's racist remarks had crossed the line. He couldn't believe that in the 21st century, people still dared to utter such horrible words. This contempt wasn't just directed at him. It was directed at all those who had worn this uniform, at those who had shed blood to protect this country. It was directed at David Lee, the young soldier lying in that casket. Colonel Smith clenched his fists, but he didn't reveal his anger. He knew that people like her wanted to see him lose control. They wanted to witness a black man erupt in rage, so they could justify their discrimination. But he wouldn't give them that satisfaction. "What are you talking about?" Colonel Smith growled, his anger evident on his face, but his voice still controlled. "Do you know who you're talking to?" "I don't care who you are," the employee retorted, her voice defiant. "Here, we have our own rules. If you don't comply, you won't be boarding." Colonel Smith stared directly into her eyes, his gaze as sharp as a knife. He said nothing, but his eyes spoke volumes. They conveyed anger, contempt, and determination. He wouldn't let this injustice pass. He would demand justice, not just for himself, but for all those who had been discriminated against. In his mind, memories of the past flashed before him. He recalled the times he had been discriminated against. The scrutinizing eyes, the derogatory remarks. He remembered his black comrades who had sacrificed their lives for the country, yet were still treated unfairly. He remembered his promise, the promise to never leave anyone behind. And he knew he couldn't remain silent. He had to stand up, had to fight, to make people like this employee understand that racism has no place in this society. Colonel Smith stared directly into her eyes, his gaze as sharp as a knife's edge. He said nothing, but that single look spoke volumes, revealing the depths of his emotions. It conveyed a potent mix of righteous indignation, burning anger, and unwavering determination. He was resolved to seek justice, not only for the personal insult he had endured, but also for all those who had suffered the sting of discrimination. He turned to address the onlookers, his voice resonating throughout the waiting area. "I am Colonel John Smith," he declared, "and I am being denied boarding by this airline solely because of the color of my skin. I am here to escort the remains of a fallen soldier, a hero who made the ultimate sacrifice, and they are preventing me from fulfilling my duty." A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd, their eyes wide with disbelief and outrage. Several individuals pulled out their phones, capturing the scene with their cameras, their fingers swiftly sharing the information with the world. Others whispered among themselves, their voices filled with a sense of injustice, struggling to comprehend what they were witnessing. The employee paled, a cold sweat breaking out on her forehead. She had not anticipated that Colonel Smith would expose her actions to the public eye. She knew she had made a mistake, but she hadn't foreseen the severity of the consequences. "Sir, you cannot do this," she pleaded, her voice trembling, almost begging. "These are company policies. We cannot deviate from them." "Which policies?" Colonel Smith countered, his voice dripping with sarcasm, his contempt palpable. "Which policies allow you to treat me with such disrespect? Which policies grant you the right to dishonor the memory of those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our country?" The employee fell silent, her fingers trembling as she gripped the edge of the counter. She had no answer, no defense. She could only stand there, her eyes fixed on Colonel Smith, a mixture of fear and remorse swirling within them. Just then, a middle-aged man stepped forward. He was dressed in a well-tailored suit, an airline employee ID badge clipped to his lapel. His face was etched with worry, deep lines creasing his forehead. "I am the shift manager," he announced, his voice filled with concern, yet maintaining a semblance of composure. "Please accept my sincerest apologies for this inconvenience. Sir, we will resolve this matter immediately." "Resolve it how?" Colonel Smith pressed, his voice firm and unwavering. "She has insulted me, dishonored our fallen soldiers, and she must be held accountable for her actions." The shift manager turned his gaze towards the employee, his eyes filled with disappointment and sternness. "What exactly did you say?" he demanded, his voice low but laced with authority. The employee bowed her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. She dared not meet his gaze. Overwhelmed by shame and fear. I was merely following policy, she stammered, her voice trembling, choked with emotion. Which policy? The shift manager thundered, his voice now a raw expression of his fury. Which policy allows you to treat a soldier with such disdain? Which policy justifies your disrespect towards those who have made the ultimate sacrifice? The employee remained silent, tears falling to the floor. She had no answer, no excuse. You are terminated, the shift manager declared, his voice cold and decisive. Effective immediately. The employee burst into sobs, her voice choked with emotion. She couldn't believe she had been fired. She had worked here for years and had never encountered such a catastrophic consequence. But I was only following the rules, she pleaded, her voice a desperate whisper, clinging to a shred of hope. Your rules have desecrated the honor of a soldier, have spat upon the memory of those who have given their all for our nation. The shift manager retorted, his voice dripping with contempt, devoid of any sympathy. You are unworthy to wear this uniform. The employee's sobs echoed through the stillness of the airport, a symphony of her shattered pride. She knew she had erred, had crossed a line that should never have been breached. She had allowed the poison of prejudice to cloud her judgment, and now she was paying a steep price for her transgression. She knew that her life, from this moment forward, would take a drastically different course. Colonel Smith observed her, his eyes betraying neither pity nor triumph. He understood that she had reaped the consequences of her actions, but he also recognized that it was a just recompense for the injustice she had inflicted. I trust that this experience has served as a valuable lesson, Colonel Smith stated, his voice now calm, though still laced with a hint of sternness. Discrimination, in any form, has no sanctuary in our society. The employee remained silent, her tears continuing to flow, a testament to her profound regret. She knew she had made a grave mistake, and she would now have to bear the weight of its repercussions, a harsh but necessary lesson in the virtues of justice and respect. The incident at Los Angeles International Airport has sounded a wake-up call regarding the lingering presence of racial discrimination in modern society. The actions of the airline employee were not merely an insult to Colonel John Smith, a black soldier fulfilling a solemn duty, but also a blatant disregard for the values that America proudly upholds: equality and justice. This story serves as a profound reminder that, regardless of location or time, we must speak out against discrimination, defend human values, and strive to build a more just and civilized society. The story of Colonel John Smith serves as a reminder of racial discrimination. Let's spread this story by clicking like, share, and leaving a comment. Your interaction will contribute to raising awareness of this issue. Together, we can create a more just and civilized society.